of our history. You know, when somebody draws a master plan of a town, they don't draw even your kitchen and your door hanging on there and your light switch on the master plan. No, they draw the whole town, and they just show how the roads go and how the houses are related to each other and to the road. That puts everything in there. That's the whole town drawn in one master plan. This is what chapter 2 is like. It's a master plan of our history from the time Daniel was writing, from the time that we were introduced to yesterday when Daniel was taken into captivity, until the end of the world. That is the master plan in the book of Daniel, and we need to understand it. It's so important. So, first thing I want us to pick up there is that God speaks to superpowers. God speaks to superpowers. Let's go rewind a little bit to the time of Abraham. During the time of Abraham, God calls him. He says, "Come out of Ur of the Chaldeans." Now, Ur of the Chaldeans is the same place called Babylon, where now we find the children of Israel are captive into. Now, before they were captured there, God wanted them to minister, the children of Israel, to minister to these people of Babylon. But they failed to minister. Then God sent them there in captivity. I want us to go back again, rewind a little bit to the time of Joseph. During the time of Joseph, the nation of Israel was still just Israel and his 12 sons. And God sends them into Egypt so that they can minister to a superpower called Egypt. And they were to be there to minister. So that was God wanting to speak to the superpower of the time, Egypt. The same way that God was now speaking to Babylon, a superpower, through Israel and through Daniel. Now, in the last days, God is also going to talk to superpowers. God has not rejected the world. God still wants to evangelize, and he will speak to the superpowers even of today. Now, an interesting concept I find in chapter 2 there is wisdom. Yesterday we read of Daniel and his friends being in university and learning with other people so that they are all wise. The king trained people so that he has a lot of wise people. And they were all trained, but Daniel and his friends were 10 times wiser. Now, there is no one on earth who can do what the king asks. The wise men come up with a conclusion like that. That's an interesting statement from wise people. The king had a problem, and he's asking the wise men, "I need you to solve this problem now. I have a problem." And he calls them together. "Solve it. You are wise. I've trained you." And they say, "No, king. There is no one on earth who can do what you are asking." The wisdom of the wise is being tested, and it found wanting. The wise men can't solve the problem. Now, when they couldn't solve the problem, that made the king very angry. He was very furious. Now, very interesting what he does when he's angry and furious. And what he does is that he issues an order. He says, all of the wise men must be executed. All of the wise men. And that included Daniel and his friends. And not even their wisdom could save them. They were all in trouble. Them and their families were to be executed. I want you to notice that the kings of these superpowers, when they get upset, they issue orders to execute. And the wise men can't save themselves. No matter how wise you are, you cannot save yourself. Now, then another concept that I want us to pick up in chapter 2 is a concept that runs through the Bible, really. Because if you go back, remember we read in Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, if you remember, chapter 46, verse 10 says, God declares the end from the beginning. And from ancient times, he declares the things that are not yet done. And he says, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Now, that's an interesting concept about God. God sees right into the future when it is at the beginning. And he says, what I counsel is going to go through. He tells you things that have not yet been done. Oh, really? Can he do that? We need to test God. Was he serious about this? Can he really do that? And Daniel chapter 2 tells us that, again, if I go to Daniel chapter 2, verse 21, he says, he changes times and seasons. Watch that phrase. As we go through the book of Daniel, you need to watch this phrase. It's special. God changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and he raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and he gives knowledge and discerning. It's God who gives these. If you need wisdom and knowledge and discernment, God is the one who gives this. Now, verse 22 agrees with Isaiah. It says, he reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. So in this chapter, not only this chapter, but the rest of Daniel will show us how God reveals deep things, how God says things way before they happen and they come to pass exactly. That is what defines God and sets him apart from everybody else. Because he says, I'm the Lord, the sovereign. And verse 28, after Daniel and his friends are threatened, Daniel prays with his friends and God the revealer, reveals the secret to him. Then Daniel goes back to the king and he says, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. So the king is being shown, God is revealing to the king. What was worrying the king? God is revealing it. And what he is revealing is telling about what is going to happen in the days to come. In summary, this was the problem. The king had a dream and he couldn't remember the dream. And Daniel tells the king what he had forgotten, the dream. He says, in the dream, you dreamt a big statue. And that statue had a head of gold. It had the arms and chest of silver. It had a belly and thighs of brass. And it had legs of iron. And then it had feet of iron mixed with clay. Now, Daniel said this is a secret that is being revealed, and this secret is talking about the future of the world and what is going to happen. And remember, we define God as saying God puts kings in place and removes kings. And Daniel goes on to say, God is telling you the history. He says, you are that head of gold. Your kingdom is that head of gold. So, but then he goes on, chapter 42, verse 42, he says, after you shall come another. So, and after that there will come another, and after that there will come another, and after that there will come another. After that there will come another, until there's an until. Now, history tells us that exactly what is written in chapter 42 happened. because the kingdom of Babylon was started around 605 BC until 539 BC. You can check your history books. And then after it, he was told a Medo-Persian kingdom would come, which is the silver and arms, 539 BC until 331 BC. And then after that, there would come a Roman king, a Grecian kingdom. The Greeks would come in 331 BC to 168 BC. Check your history. And then after the Greeks would come the Roman Empire, the Iron Roman Empire. And after that, when the Roman Empire collapsed, the Papal Rome took over from 476, and that basically runs until the second coming, until. I left the until. Now, there's an interesting detail on the until there. It says, at the feet of that statue, there is a mixture of iron and clay, a mixture. Now, Matthew 22, verse 1, Jesus says a very important concept there. He says, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and render unto God what belongs to God. You'll get to connect this. Daniel 2, verse 44 says, in the days of these kings of iron mixed with clay, God, the God of heaven, will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another. It will shatter all these kingdoms. Whoa. A stone broke from the mountain without a man's hand, hit the statue at the feet of iron and clay, and shatters them. Now, iron and clay mixed doesn't work. And Daniel 2 says it doesn't work to mix the two. And God doesn't like, when there was the gold, he didn't hit the statue. When there was silver, he didn't hit the statue. When there was the bronze, he didn't. When there was iron, he didn't. But once iron and clay mix, God says, we can't have this, because now you are mixing God's things with man's things. If you will remember, the 1 Corinthians chapter 6:14 says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. When you are mixing iron with clay, you are mixing God's things with Caesar's things. You are mixing the kingdoms, and you are making God as if he is a man. My last slide says, you are on the Hall of Fame. You, yes, your history is written there. You are in the Bible. Your life today and your future is in the book of Daniel. You need to read that book. Even Jesus quoted this book of Daniel. Matthew 24, verses 14 and 15, that's my last. Jesus says, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto the nations, and then shall the end come. That's when the stone will come. Then he goes on to verse 15, he says, when you shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Whoa, if you need to know about the end time, you need to listen to Christ's words. You need to go and read Daniel. You need to read Daniel. Go and read the book and come, let's share it. May God bless you as we try and get the flesh. All the other chapters that are coming in Daniel will be giving more details, because this was the master plan in chapter 2. God bless you.